I think it's our emotional well-being would be a good definition, and wellness as it applies to how we feel and how we think, and how we're functioning at that level. So I'm Dr. Denise Levin. I'm a staff psychologist here in the Counseling Center. There is a stigma around mental health, and because of that, people who are struggling oftentimes are inhibited to ask for the help that they need, and the help that they need is available, whether that's from a friend or a professional service or a counseling center like we have here. But the stigma, the fear, the anticipation of judgment, the worry that people are going to think less of them, and really prevents people from asking for help. And it's unfortunate that that stigma exists, because we don't really have the same stigma when we think about physical well-being.
Like, if you have a broken bone, you go to the doctor and your doctor fixes the broken bone because I have an X-ray machine and I see that your bone is broken. But with mental health, you can't do that. You can do brain scans, but they don't always show like what we're looking for in regards to mental health. We don't fully understand mental illness, and we're still learning and we're still doing research. And with medical conditions, we have a lot of strong foundational evidence, and there is a lot of evidence for mental health and these disorders, but we're still discovering new things. So that's part of the stigma. It's like some people who haven't experienced mental illness don't exactly believe that it exists, because they're like, I don't understand, why can't you just get out of bed in the morning if you have depression? Like, I'm depressed sometimes, but it's different. It's different than just feeling a feeling of depression and having a diagnosis of depression.
Stigma is there because I think messages that have existed in our culture about help-seeking behavior. You should sort of deal with it on your own, suck it up.
The thought of losing our mind kind of freaks us out. And I think through associating the mind with losing it or going crazy, we've kind of taken that, and just anything that has to do with your mind, you don't want to have anything wrong with your mind because you're going crazy. And I think a lot of it has to do with the horror movies and stuff like that. And also the fact that when you are dealing with a mental health concern, it can be very isolating and hard to understand. And I think when people interact with someone or anything that they don't understand, they often kind of jump to conclusions that may not always make sense, or just something that's standardized, oh, it's just crazy. And it's a way to kind of blow it off and kind of forget about it.
I think because of the lack of knowledge and general understanding of mental illness, it's important for people who don't understand to just listen to people who have these disorders, and not write them off right away like, oh, I know about depression because X, Y, and Z. It's about really understanding each person's experience with their disorder.
I think a way in taking a step forward is, really, I guess just being open, and respecting, maybe respecting the way, like I said, my version of self-care is maybe going for a run, or candles or coloring, which can be seen as kind of silly, but I think maybe someone who maybe not understanding that, respecting that that's something that helps me, and me trying to understand what helps them. And I just think the biggest way that we can maybe improve and move forward is recognizing that we are whole people, and that the mind is just as important as the body. I think that right now that's your mind isn't even in the conversation. So the first step would definitely be bringing that into the conversation.
There are resources that exist, like the Counseling Center and the Wellness and Prevention Center, and clubs and organizations like the Mental Health Ambassadors and the We Can students. There's a number of groups on campus that are invested in mental well-being and wellness in that way.
AppSci is a eating disorder and body image positivity club on campus, and it stands for Advocates Promoting Positive Self-Image. So we wanted to found this club to give people that resource and direct them to different resources and show them that like there are people on campus who can help, and there are people who like are struggling with things similar to you.
Our overall mission is to just spread positivity and love throughout App State's campus. We have no like hidden agenda or anything like that. We really just want people to feel loved. And so I think that like that's probably our biggest mission. But along with that, we also want to have a community for people who are looking for that family, you know, if we were looking for a place to belong and feel, like I said earlier, like valued and worthy. We're trying to start, I guess, a lot of like traditions. We have Cutting Ties with the Tags, where we cut the size tags off of a bunch of donated clothes and just sell them, so it's this whatever you feel good in kind of shopping experience. And I would just love to see that really grow and have just like kind of turn into a bunch of like people performing and people shopping and just a whole thing of like loving every part of what makes us human, and something that everybody looks forward to on campus.
By cutting out the tags of these, it makes it like a more objective experience for shopping, and it's not about like, am I small enough to fit into this size small, or am I like too big to fit into this medium? It's more about like, hey, do I feel comfortable in this? Like, does this make my body feel good when I present it to the world? Or like, hey, I really like this color or this pattern, and opposed to like looking at the size like, oh, this is not gonna fit me because it's a size small. It's like, hey, I think I want to try this on because I like the way it feels, or I like the way it like might look.
I think as we can sort of bring light to mental health and bring light to mental illness and see it as like a very acceptable and necessary part of our existence, our wellness, then it's not going to be as stigmatized, because people will see that sort of it's a normal thing to do, that if we are overcome with some sort of emotional distress and we don't feel good mood-wise, then it's acceptable for us to let somebody know. I think that in the same way we sort of pay attention to how we're feeling physically, it's really important for each of us to kind of take a temperature, a reading of how we're feeling emotionally, and just keeping track of that. And so if you're feeling joy and happiness, like really being curious, what just happened? Like, what just made me feel that way? Or if you're feeling really sad and blue and down, what just happened? What just made me feel that way? So allowing for more sort of check-ins internally, so that then we are realizing that that part of ourselves is so important to our health and our wellness and our functioning day to day.
Self-care, I think, is like one of the most underrated parts of life. People like go through their life and they're not really thinking about like, hey, have I thought about how I'm doing today? Or hey, what have I done just for me?
We can, each of us, sort of learn to accept and be open to our own emotional experiences, and realizing that it's okay to be vulnerable. Then as we open up about that, like our true selves, I think then other people will see that and acknowledge it within themselves. So, wow, I didn't realize that you also worried about that, or me too, like I have that same fear, or I feel the same way, or I suffer from those same symptoms. So I think as each of us makes an effort to acknowledge and honor and express our struggles, then other people will do the same.
We're not just our mind and we're not just our body. We are like a whole person, and we have these things that come together. So like self-care really like it really stresses the importance of the mind-body connection, so you can take care of yourself as a holistic person.
AppSci does this thing where we hand out like love letters, like positive letters. So we'll have a contact table and we'll just hand them out. And I always write on mine like, you are worthy, you are valuable. And I think those words just have such a big impact, because we don't really tell people that a lot. So I just think letting people know like, hey, like I see you, and you're valuable.
Mental health matters.
Mental health matters.
Mental health matters.